You know, I just finished my most recent tour of my stand-up show, Why John Howard Really Sucked. Thank you very much for everybody coming, soon to be available on friendlyjordies.com. Go watch my previous stand-up shows for just $12.99. Woo, Christmas not discount. Friendly Jordies Classics. Anyway, it was an entire hour explaining how the Howard government represented nothing but a squandered opportunity for the nation and was responsible for every systematic economic problem the nation faces today. And lo and behold, Dave Rubin, Mr. Conversation himself, had one of his famous mouth exchanges with the second banana to Howard, John Anderson. Same first name so as not to confuse the public in the event of Howard's sudden death. You can kill me, but another John will just be activated. To quote the most overused meme in existence, the Infinity War is the most ambitious crossover event in history. Me. Titans of conversation, glad to be having a conversation about how there needs to be a conversation about the nature of conversation. And believe me, I was very glad they had the conversation.
I don't want to force anyone to live their life any way than they want to. They can't come on my property and take things from me or force me to do anything. But I want my neighbor on this side and my neighbor on this side. I actually don't care what their beliefs are per se, as long as it's not infringing on my rights or someone else's rights. And that's how most people want to live.
Well, he's not wrong. Most people do agree with that general premise. One notable exception, the man you're sitting across from. John Anderson passed the 1998 amendments to the Native Title Act. The amendment allows mining companies to go onto Indigenous land and search for/extract resources without their permission. He is basically the Colonel from Avatar. Do you get why? Because they look similar. What I'm saying, Dave, is don't get it twisted. He would have a couple of bodybuilders hold you down and get two midgets lick your nipples for all eternity as the nun from Game of Thrones disrespectfully rebrands you. Slave boobin! Slave boobin! Look, what I'm saying is he'd violate you for a vote. Does that point come across? Is this how you have a dialogue?
But generally speaking, if you live in the West, and I can certainly say this from an American perspective, 95% of the political debate, I think, is being had with people that have good intentions. Are there bad guys on both sides? For sure. Are there plenty of people who disagree with all sorts of things that I believe? Absolutely. But what you did there, that move from these are my opponents, I've got to destroy them, or that they're evil.
Well, first off, I don't think 95% of people in the West have good intentions. I mean, look at how many people go to U2 concerts. John Anderson, the man that allowed foreign multinational mining companies to gut 83% of the mining boom's profits from this nation. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that could have been spent on schools, hospitals, quelling the extinction crisis, future-proofing this nation's economy for generations to come like Norway did, and with change left over to give everyone in the country those Looney Tunes car seat covers that only Australians seem to think are mad.
It's not just the picture, it's also that they smell like Maccas. Now that's what I call a toofer.
John Anderson didn't allow international mining companies to rob us because he's ideologically bound to the idea that these species must go extinct as part of God's greater plan. He's not Tony Abbott. He did it for donations from mining companies. And if you're doing morally abhorrent acts like impoverishing the future of the nation you were born in because
fuck it, I make good money,
you're an evil person. Though I will say the fact that you're from the bush and you behave like that does make you the coolest person on earth, because who else can put this on a business card? John Anderson, cowboy gangster, yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers.
But to just come back to these sort of three great philosophical streams that we had in our country, and there were approximations in most Western countries. Then you had your classic liberals, if you like, in the Adam Smith mould. Mm-hmm. Government should stay out of our affairs as much as possible, limited size.
Light touch of government.
Strong civic communities, families, voluntary organisations, sporting, churches, etc., neither wanting nor willing to accept big intrusive governments. Mm-hmm. But that's, you've then got a philosophical framework about which you can argue, hopefully without that personal passion and hatred. And then you had your classic conservatives.
See? I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I will continue to make this point like a Tickle Me Elmo in the target section until someone buys me for me. But virtually every political video on YouTube should be flagged and re-uploaded on Pornhub because they're all wank. This man objectively made life worse for nearly every inhabitant on this continent, And yet here he is having this abstract conversation about morality, which boils down to an hour of liberalism, socialism, conservatism. Any facts, John? No, we're setting up the philosophical framework. Now, where was I? Liberalism. Glad we had the conversation. An island of civility in an uncivil world. Smiley face. Thank you, John. You know why he does this? Because if you look at John Anderson's actions in office, his guiding political philosophy is actually very simple. It's that 30 CEOs should control the world's resources as long as he gets a pittance of it. Just doesn't have the same ring to it as Christian Enlightenment era liberalism, does it? That's why people like him use these words, because they're propaganda tools. They are subjective, abstract ideas. Actions are not. You can label someone's political ideology any way you like without saying anything of substance. For instance, I don't think John Anderson comes from the Smithsonian tradition of thought. I think he comes more from the proud philosophy of the rat.
Can I have a piece of that cheese?
And interact with one another at a high enough plane because we believe a higher authority has said, I can't lord it over you. I have to respect you. Because a higher being said, your soul is of equal value of mine, so to speak. That's a bit of a lift from our longest serving Prime Minister, who's not a man who wore religion on his sleeve, Bob Menzies, but he actually said democracy is not a machine, it's a spirit.
That's a great quote. That's a great quote. I love that.
I'd love it too if he cherished the spirit of democracy instead of capturing it and cramming it in a jar. Hey matey, I'm gonna use you as a nightlight. Because maybe I'm not enlightened on f***ing Rousseau like John Anderson is, but I always thought that the basic tenement of democracy was freedom of information. John Anderson had the opportunity to greatly increase diversity of thought in this country by setting limits on how much companies could monopolise the media market. Instead, he voted strongly against any bill that would have diversified media outlets. What happened to your spirit of democracy back then, John? Just weren't vibing it? You were a proud enforcer and benefactor of the guided democracy that Australia is currently under, and yet now you're scared that people are getting shut out of the debate. What happened? Do you miss getting invited onto Landline, do you, John? We need to have a civil debate about who makes better tractors, John Deere or Caterpillar Inc. Let's have this discussion with respect. You know what else is incredible? John Anderson's introduction video to his YouTube page. This is a snippet.
There are many Australians now who feel shut out of the debate. One of the great problems, of course, is that we've got this stultifying, what's now called political correctness. Time for a rethink on how we debate. There are no problems confronting Australia that can't be decently resolved with a proper civil debate where people go for the evidence, not for the other person's jugular.
Is that right? Well, instead of having a discussion about how much you like discussions, John, I invite you to have a discussion with me about your record as Deputy PM. Doors open. I'm just happy to have the conversation. I am glad you have a second YouTube channel, John, your first one being Sky News. And may I just say, welcome to the Matrix. Very fitting that your name is
Mr. Anderson.
And just to show you how much I appreciate the input, allow me to start the discourse. This is so intellectually stimulating, I feel my brain throbbing like my penis/vagina when I go on X videos. But you know what would make my neurons oscillate into another dimension, John? How your openness to good ideas and love of good policy led you to avoiding a mining tax during the mining boom and making indigenous/rural land a free-for-all for mining and gas companies like the one you went to work for when you left office. Good to see the spirit of mateships alive and well. Your ideas are awesome. Anyway, please respond, because I feel I have so many Smithsonian Enlightenment experience points to siphon from you, Mr. Second Banana Man. I love you in a Christian way, Geordies. Anyway, in short, like this video if you valued the conversation.
Please share and comment below. Comment.